Welcome to The Outlet, an NBA podcast hosted by Nick Fay and Kory Waldron.
On this episode of The Outlet, Kory and I recap Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals. As always, you can catch The Outlet on all streaming platforms. Enjoy the show. All right, Kory. Game 4 Western Conference Finals just wrapped up. Lakers took a convincing 3-1 lead of the series after tonight's 114-108 victory. Anthony Davis started out on fire. Jamal Murray tried to respond. Thoughts on this game and how this series is kind of coming together?
All right, so we have to get the 3-1 joke out of the way, right? So
Yeah.
The Nuggets now are in their favorite position, at least for this playoff run, obviously coming back from down 3-1, not only to the Jazz, but to the Clippers as well last round. I mean, like you said, Jamal Murray was great. I mean, he was scoring at will, some really nice offensive acrobats, right? The layup, which was Jordan-like, scoring in a variety of ways. You had a good tweet. You and me have been really critical of Jamal Murray over the course of this season, like his career to this point in time. Now, is this just Jamal Murray on a really hot playoff run? Or, is this the Jamal Murray to expect going forward? Because it raises the ceiling for this Nuggets team if this is going to be the new norm for Jamal Murray.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked like at times the best player in the series. Like there was points tonight where he had that acrobatic layup, like you mentioned. I don't even know how he finished that. Like he looked like he was going to try to dunk on LeBron, was able to get his hand under the rim and then put English on it and get that in. And he hit it perfectly. It wasn't like it rattled in and it looked lucky. It looked like it was something that he practices. A couple other finishes in this game. And I thought even in the fourth quarter, he had a couple nice drives on LeBron where LeBron probably got away with a couple fouls on him. Mm-hmm. So props to him. And like you said, Kory, I think Jamal Murray it's even almost harder to gauge him now because is this the real guy? Is this what to expect next season, or is this an outlier? I think regardless, though, you expect his game to be higher next year because you don't have this type of stretch in the postseason without it impacting your confidence and also just the way you kind of are composed during the game. Because even in the past, I remember watching Jamal Murray, he has good handles, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't seem like he's fazed by the defense. He's just kind of running his offense and doing what he wants to do. It's almost like Nikola Jokic-esque. You know what I mean? It's like he rubbed off on him, and it's really given them an opportunity to, have chances in the series. This series easily could almost be 2-2 or 3-1 in favor of the Nuggets because Anthony Davis hit that game winner. And then tonight, the Nuggets weren't far out from winning this game. Rebounding really hurt them in this one. 12 offensive rebounds for the Lakers. I think I heard something like 20 plus second chance points. You just can't afford for that to happen in a postseason game, especially when you're losing the turnover battle too, only by 3 turnovers, I believe. But still, you want to win any category you can when LeBron and Anthony Davis are on the other team.
Yeah, they lost to 3 crucial categories: rebounding, free throws, and turnovers. You lose all 3 of those, you're probably in bad shape. The Nuggets lost all 3 of those.
Yeah.
While also not having a great night shooting-wise from 3. Obviously, I think they ended up shooting 35% on the game for 3, but for most of the game, they weren't hitting the long ball.
Yeah, 10-28 in comparison to the Lakers 10-30. And we talked about this in the preview. We talked about this in a couple of recaps. This is an area we'd like to see the Nuggets win to have a shot in the series because they have probably better three-point shooters, considering the Lakers don't really necessarily have anybody they can count on other than KCP at this point.
Yeah, 100%. And they had stretches, right? I mean, Michael Porter Jr. had a pretty effective 20 minutes, I thought. Honestly, could have seen more of him. Those 2 threes he had late in the third quarter were really tough. I mean, the one step back where he pump faked as well to get Kuzma done was
Do you think there's something going on between him and Kuzma? Because it feels like it. It feels like there's a little extra juice between those two. One guy scores, the other guy tries to score. It's Kuzma feels like he can score on Porter Jr. and Porter Jr. feels like he can score on Kuzma every possession.
There's got to be a little bit of something there, right? I mean, both young guys, both obviously in the conference finals. I could totally see there being a little rift between the two, just trying to one up the other.
And both kind of I guess weird personalities or different personalities, overly confident. And in Michael Porter Jr.'s case, it's kind of warranted because the talent is there, where Kuzma's kind of got that extra hype in his rookie season. It's never really faded.
Yeah, 100%. Kyle Kuzma has the Tyler Herro type of confidence, except he doesn't have quite the skill to back it up fully.
Yeah, he might have an IG girlfriend too, but doesn't have the same stuff on the court.
Yeah, 100%. So I mean, this was disappointing for the Nuggets. Obviously, they were in this game the entire time. Trailed just 5 at halftime. Definitely won the third quarter if you were bouncing off who won it. Coming up just short. Then we get the Lakers. Rondo, once again, I felt like had a huge impact for
Yeah.
the Lakers coming off the bench. Playmaking wise, the go to have Dwight Howard start at center, I thought was another good move. I definitely felt like his defensive physicality definitely makes Jokic somewhat uncomfortable. Maybe not to like a giant amount, but it's clearly a factor in this series. The difference between him matched up against McGee or Howard. What were some of your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I think having Dwight out there on Jokic, he just approaches him at the perimeter where McGee is timid out there. Like you can tell he doesn't feel comfortable where Dwight's like, oh, I love it. Like he's playing with energy, waving his hands up and down. Obviously a little bit of the antics, but I thought that was a good move. McGee played 5 minutes in this game. You probably could not play him the next game. He wasn't terrible. I think he had one rebound in all that time. But like you said, Rondo was a guy that I felt like was just making a lot of big plays. Whenever the Lakers needed a clutch play, be an offensive rebound, even the 1-3 he hit an assist, whatever it was, he kind of came up big on a night where I really didn't think LeBron was that great. Yeah, he scored 26 points, got to the free throw line 14 times, probably some of those he didn't deserve, and shot 7 of 18 from the field, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. And I'm out here saying it's not an amazing game, but for LeBron's standards, it just didn't feel the same.
No, it didn't feel like a LeBron had his like grip on this game. Like he was controlling the outcome. It didn't feel like LeBron was controlling the outcome of this game.
It felt like AD almost had more of an influence, but he kind of faded in the second half too.
As well, and I had someone try and say what I was saying was misleading about Anthony Davis rebounding numbers. It has been weird that the last couple of games he can't grab rebounds. Some of it is positioning, of course, but when you average 10 per game and all of a sudden you're averaging 0.5, that's not like a misleading stat. That is simply you're not playing the same style of basketball or with the same tenacity of getting rebounds.
I think offensive rebounds I really want to see. As long as the Lakers are taking care of the boards like themselves and the defensive rebounds are there and he's boxing out, like, yeah, Dwight had an 11 tonight and they do have rebounding guards, so whatever. But he should be getting more than one offensive rebound a game because the amount of switches that happen over the course of a game. And then even if he has Nikola Jokic on him, like he's substantially more athletic than Jokic if he's trying to box him out. And Millsap, he has, the inches on him.
100%. And I don't know. I would like to see that that's like the one change I would like to see from the Lakers is Anthony Davis being a little bit more aggressive on the boards. But like you said, defensively, it's not the issue. It's offensively that you want to see more of it. Because again, if he's being more aggressive on the offensive boards, they win that battle this game by an even bigger amount, which was a huge win for them already.
And I think AD kind of has stints in the game where he just feels like not as aggressive. Like when he started the game, he came out and he said, hey, I'm a best player on the floor tonight. I'm going to score. No one can guard me. And that was really the case until Denver started throwing double teams. And then that started opening up things for the Lakers and making everything easier. But in the second half, you didn't really get that same vibe from Anthony Davis in terms of like the dominant scoring. And getting back to LeBron a little bit, I think what really stuck out, there was possessions where he had mismatches against Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray. Michael Porter Jr. was able to kind of exploit that, but that's not really saying much, no disrespect to him. But when he had Murray or Jokic was able to force him to a mid-range shot in which he clanked off the front of the rim. And that's just kind of concerning because you want to see LeBron have that explosion, that athleticism. And it just maybe hasn't been here the last 2 games. I'm not saying LeBron's not the same player, but maybe it's that ankle sprain that we saw a few games ago where maybe that groin's acting up or whatever it might be. It just doesn't feel like he has that same juice. And if Anthony Davis wasn't on this team being able to drop 30 every night, I don't know where the Lakers would be right now.
Yeah, I mean, you even add to the next point of like, LeBron obviously didn't look like his best. And the Lakers were still able to win, which is promising because, again, Danny Green can't, he's in a rut again shooting wise. I mean, I don't remember the last time I saw him hit a shot, even though he was 1 of 6 tonight.
He hasn't really been defending that well either against Jamal Murray.
So that's problematic if you're the Lakers as well, just to keep an eye on. Kuzma, again, I thought there was decent stints from him, but again, he's an ineffective shooter too often. Honestly, KCP is the one guy like I have really no complaints about, but Alex Caruso also is the guy who can't seem to find the bottom of the bucket as well either. And that's problematic because, like you mentioned, LeBron isn't playing great and they're still getting wins. But you need to see LeBron a little bit more efficient and a little bit more effective at getting his own offense going because playmaking wise and facilitating for others, LeBron's fine. Like that has not dipped at all. But it's his ability to score almost around the rim that has looked the worst.
And getting to the spots that he's used to getting. And some of that is correlated to the Lakers not having shooters. Like Frank Vogel played a lineup tonight that was Rajon Rondo, Alex Caruso, Kyle Kuzma, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis. where are you getting 3-point shooting in that lineup? Like Caruso,
Yeah.
I know, is an average 3-point shooter. Rondo, playoff Rondo will hit him sometimes. LeBron's, not consistent. Anthony Davis, you don't necessarily want shooting those threes. And you mentioned Kuzma, 2 of 7 tonight. So it's really hard to provide LeBron the spacing that he needs in these situations, especially that he doesn't probably have that same pop that he did, 2 years ago in terms of the vertical and just kind of beating everybody at the rim. Where like, now Jeremy Grant can get blocks on him. Torrey Craig has gotten a couple blocks on him. You know what I mean? Other guys were in the past. It's like, it almost felt like LeBron never got blocked unless it was like an elite center in the league. And now it just feels like it's a real possibility against anybody. And he got away with a lot of fouls down the stretch in terms of like, I thought he always gets away with offensive fouls, but the one on Jamal Murray and then the one on Jokic in the corner, they were pretty clear cut.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, somewhat ironic, right? That article comes out earlier today about LeBron complaining about fouls not being called against him. And then in this game, there were calls that should have been called against them that weren't called against them, which, should be taken to the same light of him not getting to the free throw line as often, even though his free throw line numbers, I think, are up from the regular season. So the whole, complaint isn't necessarily warranted.
35 free throws for the Lakers, only 23 for Denver.
That matters, especially when you lose by less than 10.
Yeah, and I didn't feel like Denver wasn't attacking the paint either. You know what I mean? No. I felt like there was plenty of opportunities. Even some of those highlight plays we saw from Jamal Murray easily could have probably gotten an and one on some of those. But anybody else you want to discuss on the Lakers?
No, I mean, we talked on Dwight. You would like to see more shooting from the guards, whether it's Caruso or Danny Green or even KCP, even though he shot 41%. Rondo, I don't know how to gauge Rondo offensively at this point, right? I'm expecting playmaking and rebounding and just honestly heads up defense and being in the right place. But when it comes to Rondo offensively, if he's going to hit a couple of threes, great. I'm not relying on it.
Yeah.
But it's problematic when he's the best 3-point shooter out of him, Danny Green, and Alex Caruso and Kyle Kuzma. That's not good going down the road here.
Yeah, I think 20 minutes is probably the right spot for Rondo, maybe even a little bit less, because you just not having that, that 3-point shooting out there just hurts. But like you said, the other guys aren't hitting their shots either. So it's like, I don't know what Frank Vogel can do. It's not like he's going to pull out Quinn Cook or Jared Dudley or J.R. Smith. Those guys aren't probably going to see any minutes. They are all pretty good 3-point shooters, but it doesn't seem like at this point it would really make sense. I think what we saw from the Lakers in this series is really how they're going to win. And when it comes to clutch time, it's not necessarily going to be their offense. It's going to be their defense. They have the ability to kind of lock guys down. But going against a team like Denver, it's tough because good offense always beats good defense. And when you have, at this point, 2 elite offensive players in Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, it's going to be a real problem. And I thought Jeremy Grant also stepped up again. I was kind of saying how I didn't anticipate him having another big scoring game. 17 points on 6 of 13, pretty solid out there. But Gary Harris again, Paul Millsap again, not really giving them anything. 8 points on 2 of 8 shooting.
I mean, the fact that Gary Harris could only play, 18 minutes and Paul Millsap only 16 minutes, that's problematic, especially when you think about how much money both guys make.
Yeah.
And you can't play those guys more than 20 minutes. Obviously, both guys offensively have been a huge negative for the Nuggets. Like you mentioned, Jeremy Grant. I mean, he was the clear-cut third-best player again. Obviously, got a little bit beaten up more this game defensively than they did last game. Lakers being a little bit more aggressive with their stars. But there's nothing you.
He got put on AD a little bit more this game too.
Yeah, it's just the simple fact. I mean, you look at where the issues come from is the fact that Paul Millsap and Gary Harris are providing very little. I don't know, and I don't know how you fix the bench scoring at times for the Nuggets. It almost feels like they miss a guy like Will Barton, for being honest.
Sure. I mean, Will Barton would probably change a series. And that's not crazy to say because
it might be too much offense for the Lakers to handle if there was another type of guard scoring, 15 to 20 points per game for this Nuggets team.
And he's improved defensively. And let's be honest, you can hide a defender on Danny Green or on, even KCP is really just spotting up at this point.
Yeah.
In Paul Millsap, I think going forward in the series, I would play him as a backup 5. Yeah, whatever, start him, play him for 4 minutes and pull him out of the game because Mason Plumlee's been pretty bad. So
those minutes were terrible today. It was one of those minutes where he was in for only 2.5 minutes, and I was already all right, these are way too many Plumlee minutes. You got to get him out of there.
The foul he had on Anthony Davis in that 3 was just, pure kind of stupidity in terms of in the postseason, this guy's hot, you're giving him that. And I think Millsap's best minutes were when he had to play the 5 in the fourth quarter when Jokic was in foul trouble. And I think moving forward for Paul Millsap's career, that's where he's going to probably be as a backup 5 or a small ball 5 or whatever it might be. Maybe Michael Porter Jr. is the guy they have to try to play more and get more minutes out of him just to get that scoring up. But again, it kind of comes at the price of defense. And he's a guy that can be attacked, get the switch for LeBron, get the switch even for Kyle Kuzma. If he doesn't improve defensively, it's hard to keep him on the floor, especially when he's just missing backdoor cuts. We're not even talking about like on-ball defense. It's the off-ball stuff that just is a lack of focus in a Western Conference Finals game that you really just can't have.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see them take away some of Plumlee's minutes and then give them to, as you said, Millsap. I love Millsap as a backup 5. I think because he's actually an underrated passer.
Yeah,
I would love to see that. And you add some minutes to Michael Porter Jr. Because like Torrey Craig, even though he played like 19 minutes, he doesn't provide. Even though he's a good defender, he doesn't provide enough defense to outweigh the fact that he's just not that good of an offensive player aside from the spot up 3.
Yeah, and it's not even much there, but it is interesting in comparison of like Torrey Craig and Paul Millsap, because like what Torrey Craig does do a little bit better offensively is some of those cuts he makes with Jokic just getting the double teams. I've noticed that's an area where he kind of excels, but that's only going to happen so much. And Torrey Craig really can't guard LeBron. So it felt like he was having some success against Torrey Craig because Craig was trying to be physical with him. And that's one area where LeBron hasn't really lost anything. But going into game 5, what does Denver need to do to change things up and get back in the series and pull off another 3-1 comeback?
I mean, Jokic needs to be better. I mean, Jokic needs to be a lot better. I mean, Jamal Murray has been obviously the clear-cut star for this Nuggets team.
Jamal Murray's been all NBA.
Right. No, 100%. He's been, first team or second team, I guess would be like the hardest question at this point. Yeah. He's been that good. Jokic, though, I just feel like he needs to make more. He needs to get more involved early. And I think, Dwight Howard has been throwing him out of rhythm. But, the big part of those wins that they had over the Clippers last year is because it was Jokic and Jamal Murray down the stretch. A lot of high screens that were freeing up Jokic for top of the key threes. I'd like to see more of that involved in the Nuggets offense again. And obviously you need to somewhat limit Davis. I mean, Davis can't score at will. Obviously they did a lot better in the second half against Davis. But when Davis is scoring as well, and again, we've mentioned this on every recap, there isn't a good defensive option for the Nuggets to throw at Anthony Davis and LeBron James. But, if you're the Nuggets, you need to try and limit one of those guys and just get effective between Murray and Jokic. And hopefully, your role players can start knocking down some threes, whether it's Gary Harris or Michael Porter Jr., Torrey Craig, etc.
Yeah, I think Jokic staying out of foul trouble. And like you said, being aggressive from the start, getting some shots, even if it's 3-pointers. Like he was 2 of 3 from deep. Like Jokic is a good enough shooter where he could shoot 5 or 6 or even more threes in a game. And I wouldn't be upset about it just because he's that talented of a guy. And I feel like just kind of pick up the urgency a little bit more in the game. You can kind of see Jokic in the fourth quarter sometimes. He moves different. Like he actually moves fast and quick, where in the first quarter you don't necessarily always see that. So if he can be more aggressive and maybe Gary Harris steps up, maybe Paul Millsap, maybe Torrey Craig. They just need one of these guys to have a randomly big game, and that could be enough to kind of spark things. And defensively, we talked about this a lot in a lot of the recaps and on the preview. Crowd the paint. Like, force the Lakers to shoot threes. And they shooting 33% or 35%, and you lose because Rondo hits 4 threes. You live with that. But if you're letting Anthony Davis get to his sweet spots and get cooking early in the game, you're kind of asking to lose. Now, on the Lakers side, any change-ups you want to see for Game 5?
Obviously, we kind of alluded to need LeBron James to kind of be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more efficient early on. Because I also think, obviously, as much as he's an important part of the offense, facilitating-wise, when LeBron's also hitting his shot, I think it almost inspires the rest of the guys. Like the guys just kind of feed off of that energy. Like, oh, wow, he's got the entire game going tonight. And as you mentioned, Danny Green, have an effective shooting game. Even though last game I thought he was good and effective despite not having good shooting numbers, tonight there was very little of Danny Green that I liked. Caruso needs to be slightly more effective. I'd like to see Kuzma slightly more effective. You need those role players, especially in this next game, to close this out because also, even though it's a Game 5, you would still only be down 3-2 or up 3-2. You don't want to have that narrative of another 3-1 deficit kind of like blossoming for this Nuggets team. Like they win Game 5 and all of a sudden maybe they start feeling the momentum.
Confidence is growing on their end.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, you want to get LeBron some rest because like we mentioned, he doesn't necessarily look 100%. Maybe it's a little bit of fatigue. I don't know what it is. Anthony Davis just sprained his ankle tonight. Not sure how that's going to go because typically you sprain your ankle, you can continue to play, but it's really the next day where that thing kind of pops up and could be an issue moving forward. So if I'm the Lakers, like you said, I want to take care of business. especially because I don't know what's happening in the other series. I don't want Miami to take care of it in 5, and then they're well rested going into the finals, or maybe Miami gets pushed to 6 or 7, and now I'm getting that extra rest that I really need. So I think Lakers kind of pick up that urgency, play that good defense from the start, and kind of force the Nuggets to really, play hard to beat you, and make, just like what we said about what Denver has to do to the Lakers, force Denver's other guys to beat you. Gary Harris shoots 10 times, Paul Millsap shoots 10 times, Torrey Craig, whatever.
So
let those guys shoot. If it's you're losing to Jamal Murray because he's dropping 40 and Nikola Jokic is dropping 30, that's on you. So, but what's your prediction for Game 5?
As much as I love the Denver Nuggets' playoff run, I'm going with Lakers in 5. Whether or not Anthony Davis is affected because of the sprained ankle, I think LeBron's going to be effective. I'm expecting LeBron to be, just ready to close this out. Like, there's not going to, no look, they're down 3-2 now. Maybe they do it again. Like, we're not going to see any of that. I'm expecting LeBron to be King James once again in this Game 5.
Yeah, I think this is an area. If LeBron doesn't have a big game in Game 5, I'll officially be concerned about him. And even moving into the finals, like if he doesn't, turn it up, because this is a moment where we've seen LeBron in the past, like, okay, I'm done with this series. I'm going to finish them, and we're going to dominate this. We saw him, try to do that a little bit. Like we mentioned, he locked up Jamal Murray a couple possessions late in the game, a couple fouls, but whatever. But you could see that he wants to end this, and he knows the whole narrative and whatever it might be, and he's not going to lose this opportunity. And I even think for Anthony Davis, you want to take care of business. You want to prove you're the best big in the league. Go out there and have a big game. So I think the Lakers do close it out in 5, mainly because of that narrative. If the Nuggets didn't come back from 3-1 in the previous 2 series, I don't think there would be the same amount of urgency from the Lakers. But given that narrative and given that, like, they just know that they need to take care of business in this game.
Yeah. You don't want to build it up. You don't want to give life to something that, could, eventually lead to a Game 6 situation in which now you're playing for a lot more pressure.
Yeah. And no fans makes it weird, because now it's all in the head and everyone's just out there, and you would be able to feel the vibes of Denver kind of pick up even from the bench to the court, whatever it might be.
The confidence factor in this playoff run is a lot more serious than usual, because you don't have like the same fan base to back you up. So when you start getting to those slumps, you're really just in a slump until you figure it out. There's very little fan momentum that can affect the game, which, is a plus and a minus for certain teams, I feel like.
I think going from game to game, it's the biggest factor, because, like, all right, I just lost on the road. All right, I'm going back home. They're going to give us some extra juice and energy. And now you don't have that option. And that's probably why we saw better teams lose, like the Clippers and the Bucks earlier in this postseason. But always a pleasure, Kory. And we'll be back for the rest of the recaps, which you can find on all streaming platforms.
Peace out, Knuckleheads.